Okay. Public comments, please stand and state your name for the record. Comment?
Yeah, this is
Going what? Going.
Needham Tony, 16 Coleman Loop. And my issue is that our HOA board is instituting new amendments to our documents. And those amendments, in fact, are under the board that will give us notices that
Repeat the last part.
we're under duress in signing it, is that if we don't sign it as they want, they're giving us statements that they're gonna, we have to remove all our plantings, this, that, anything that impacts, we have to put it back to the natural way it was. That means natural to me, let's remove everything that we install. Any trees, any landscape and whatnot, but that's another issue, that's what they're threatening us with. Also, we have a meeting to discuss this about a week ago. 10 days ago?
Yeah, about 10 days ago.
Okay. And at that meeting, the HOA attorney was there as well. Now, I rose up and asked him a question. I was supposed to have 3 minutes to discuss it. Whereas everybody had supposed to have 3 minutes, but they all went over, obviously 5, 6, 7, 8 minutes. Soon as I stood up and I mentioned, how come we have to sign a whole harmless clause naming the association, blah, 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 this and that. But whole harmless. I go, that's nothing I heard of before. And the attorney had a few words to say at the end, which didn't make any sense. He hemmed and hawed about it. But then near the end of it, on my time, he said, if it was me and I was living here, I would not sign. 10, 15 minutes, or somebody else had some other conversation, and he repeated it again. Now that had us 8 or 9 people really alarmed, because they're not telling them anything about us, about it. I went to my own attorney. He looked over the documents. After 4 days, he called me back. Don't you dare sign or do anything to do with a whole harmless clause. The way it's written, this is crazy. I've never seen anything like this. And I've been doing it for 30 years. I don't know, you know, Kevin Townsend out of the Canada. But anyway, that was his point, says don't do it. Now you have the HOA attorney saying don't do it. I have an independent attorney telling me not to do it. But not before she said, if it doesn't go through, you're gonna have to dismantle everything you've done in the past 9 years. Even though you had was approved and okayed by ARC and the committee and things of this nature. So now we're in the issue that we know this has to have a resolution of the board. Has to amend it and with a board resolution. So we're asking help in this matter because we're going to go to some legal causes no matter what. If this goes through or it doesn't go through, and they've given us information that we have to remove it at our expense, it's not going to happen. We're going to fight it every inch of the way. We'll get an attorney and we'll do it. But I'm afraid I don't want to impact the village because it can impact the village because you're doing the resolution too. So I'm just trying to, no, I just don't want it to go there. But the thing is, and we've had people even caught on the sideline by certain members of the board, which I'm not mentioning anything there, but it is telling them, you don't sign yes, you're gonna lose everything you have, you're gonna have to dismantle it, they're threatening us. This isn't fair, so. That's a predicament, and we're just looking, first of all, because of the resolution with the village, we're hoping for some help. That might help us. Definitely will help us, because if you, that's a no misnomer, and not good. And there's a lot of people, and I can assure you, a lot of people that are, if they vote yes right now, they're voting because they're scared to death. That's it, and
We received a copy of this. We have not received it. The village has not received a copy.
don't worry, you won't get it, and I asked for the bill, I asked repeatedly for the minutes of the meeting we had, because they had minutes taken of it, and they told me, I talked to Donna and Lisa at the time, as we were leaving, says, can you send me the minutes of what everything that adjourned and all the questions and answers that occurred here, so the rest of the 72 people, the homes here, can at least see what was discussed. Not what I know, none of the paperwork discussed any of that. They didn't give the pros and cons that occurred at that meeting, and they're just.
Was that a board meeting or an open meeting?
It was.
You're talking about.
It was an open meeting to discuss the amendment, and that's what it was for, and that's why we went. Well, a lot of people just. There's a pile of papers, they just.
Do you have a copy of the amendment? Is what I'm asking.
I do have I don't believe I have it on me, I would have a copy of.
Well, I can guarantee you that we will not be voting on anything unless we get something
Yeah.
a couple days ahead of time.
Well, of course, they sent us all hard copies, they've sent us 2 or 3 copies, and they had to change one at a time for some reason, amended or corrected. One thing, everything was, it's just, I don't know what they're doing, and I know their attorney didn't write. I just feel confident, because he wouldn't write it and then put those words in. And in fact, my attorney said, did an attorney put this? Because if you see it, it's serious. 80% of the amendment is they're shifting complete and total responsibility on us while holding the HOA, all committees that they form, harmless. Everybody, they have there's no chance of getting any satisfaction through them when that amendment goes through. That's something wrong with that.
Well,
Yeah,
we are at a disadvantage here because we have.
You don't have-
we have-
I'll assure you, I'll make sure that you get a copy tomorrow.
Please, just make sure Peter gets one. He can
Yeah,
share.
I'll give it to Peter, because this way you'll have the latest one, because there's so many, I have a stack of this is what they've been given, because they keep changing.
Is the village technically a part of the HOA, like a member of the HOA?
Yeah.
So he's not here. Okay.
Non-voting.
Okay, so we would just need to have him. Again, right?
I would imagine that's going to the AG's office, Tom.
I'm not sure how the legislation is written. It could be that we have to approve any changes to the bylaws. For the community. I'm just not sure. I will know that by the next week.
Frank around 735 Gilman Loop. I just wanted to ask, I'm not sure if that's what you were speaking about, but does the HOA have to come to you and get permission for such a change? Voting on the licensing agreement?
That's what I have to look into.
So that's what, okay. So I just wanted to read something we did get in the mail regarding what Ben had said about feeling threatened. It says no grandfathering will be permitted, even for modifications approved by Amador, the ARC, or the board, who had no legal authority to grant them. Decks and patios under 4.08 are permitted. Legal and management costs for enforcement regarding this not going through will rise significantly, and that is in all caps. Increasing HOA assessments for everyone, which pretty much scares people into voting. Yes, let's pass this thing because of such and such. So those are the types of emails that we have gotten more than once. And they're putting different things in there to, again, it's a frightening thing. I spoke with someone the other day, a homeowner, and I had asked him, did you read the emails and do you understand what this is all about? He said, the only thing I read did not show any negativity. He said, I don't know if there are any cons to this. And one of the cons is that if it did pass and you go to sell your home and the buyer does not want to sign that lease agreement, the license agreement, you must remove everything that you put in on HOA property or the sale will not go through. So, I mean, that's a scary tactic to where you would say, I don't want to vote for this because if it passes, I'm under that liability also, besides somebody tripping. In addition to that, you don't have any privacy. Anybody can still walk on that property because it's owned by the HOA, but you are liable if they fall. And with the old harmless, you're excluding the HOA from any involvement. So that's what we're up against. So don't know if the village can help, but anyway, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Hi, Jimmy Glennis, 17 Cordelia Lane, and I agree with what people are saying. But my issue for the village is pretty simple. We moved in 2022 when I had a series of emails with the board regarding the berms behind our house. And the village is well aware how the houses are set up with the big hills behind them. One thing that has not been mentioned is the board indicated that this affects 70 of the 80 homes. So this is not a one-off. This is not people who had fences put up with Amador's approval, who now are being told, no, that you can't do that. Or myself, who had multiple discussions, Peter actually was up on hills with me looking at when the third was being mowed because there was no vegetation. So our neighbor and us planted with mulch, we put down dirt, we put down sod. We told the board what we're doing, and they said as long as we didn't interfere with the sprinkler system or any HOA plantings, we could pretty much beautify as we wanted. So over 3 years, we hadn't done that. We put in plants that are friendly to animals, bringing butterflies, all those things. So my point with this is, the board's position is, if this gets voted down, or we don't apply for a permit, we need to rip everything out. And the board is also saying, they do not have the resources to maintain the common areas. That is one of the reasons 70 homeowners have planted bushes, trees, arborvitaes, all sorts of plantings, retaining walls, because Amador did not do what he was supposed to do. And we can't go back 5 years, 7 years to fix that. And so the challenge is, I understand the board has some issues with liability, but there's also a concern that I'm told it's better for me to rip out all of the plantings because of potential liability. Plants of liability. And leave it with just dirt and just weeds. And that would be better. Or when I sell my house, which I'm not planning to do, I like it here very much. The people would now see this barren hill of sand, and that would be better off than all the plantings that we had put in. So I guess the question I just look at what the village issue is not the HOA and the homeowners responsible for preventing erosion, because frankly, if all this stuff is pulled out, like all of those hills, it's gonna be a mess. And the HOA is saying, not our problem. So homeowners who tried to fix it are being told, yeah, nice that you did that, but yeah, we don't want the liability that you did that. So that's what the struggle is, and there are some legal issues, I'm sure we can play with those too, but it's just simple to me. That either the grandfather everything in, if they want to approve what's planted, no problem. There's a liability issue, we have to increase our common liability insurance, let's do it. It's not one person, it's 70 out of 80. So it is really a community issue. That's what I just want to see us. Okay, so thank you for listening.
Just one little thing, put to that, to discuss on that real briefly, is that at this present time, we name in our insurance policy, the HOA additionally insured for any overflow and anything we've done on our property and the HOA property. So they are covered with our insurance, that our insurance will cover any liability in those areas. They want to eliminate that with this new amendment, eliminate that, so long you don't have to name us insured, because we're gonna institute this whole harmless crap on it. Which instead, in essence, does away with the need for the insurance. But we're all happy to name them officially insured, so they're protected. So I don't know why he might turn it off. He goes, they already have that. It's a problem. Why? Check it.
When is the vote scheduled on those amendments?
Pardon me?
Wednesday.
Wednesday.
The 23rd.
Next week. Yes.
No,
Now Russell, 35 Hillman, I have a question. We know they want to take themselves off of that particular piece of land. And the responsibility would be on us. So someone, yes,
Really, okay.
the HOA, in other words, they want to hold harmless. So we would be the one that would get sued in case something happened. But what I'd like to know is how does that affect the village? Because we're part of the village. And is someone going to not only sue us, but also sue the village? So that may open up a little bit of a Pandora box for the village. Because they're stepping out of it, they want to step out.
If it's not on village land, I don't see village liability,
Even though today
even
everybody.
though you
sees
are
it, that's-
geographically within
Right,
the village.
okay, I just wanted to mention that, because I didn't know how that comes into play.
Okay, any other?
My readings, this is the appropriate time to talk about rental, long-term rental.
Public comment?
Gary, you put out, there would be a change to the long-term rental, 3,500 feet radius. That's incorporated in what you'll be doing.
Yeah, what we're discussing tonight. yes.
The only other question I was curious if there was an incident or something that generated this.
It's something we've been talking about for a while. It's frustrating when, for example, there's a house that was rented, then it's vacant with an out-of-town owner. And for example, there was a flood in the basement and we couldn't get told, we didn't know who owned it. Another house, vacant house on a circle. It was almost impossible to find out who owned it. And it was just that kind of stuff that drives me nuts. We should be able to know who owns this house. On a community level, if somebody is moving in, I would like to have their contact information so we can welcome them to the village, let them know what's going on, that kind of stuff. But that's not included in the legislation. Just want to know who the owners of the building are and contacts for emergencies.
So if we're within that 3,500 radius, we won't be required to have an inspection.
That is correct, because we can
Yeah,
add to that. But we don't do that. Peter, do you want to add anything to that?
No, I mean, it came out, we had a phone call from a number of corporations, people looking to buy real estate in Mount Lake, as an investment property. From, God, what from Miami, from all over the place. And he said, this is not really what we want for the village, all these investment properties. And that's what really raised, said, oh, what should we do? How can we stop this? I guess there's no way or something. But it's gonna happen.
But if someone from Miami buys.
Yeah,
something,
sorry, Michael, we want to move there.
want to know who the manager is, call if there's a. Yes, we.
Christy Morale, yeah, kind of piggybacking off what Maya said. Just want to ensure that those of us that do have rental properties are within the 3,500, but I just want to say thank you for changing that, for adding that, because it really felt like a personal attack for those of us that do take care of our property and have it well insured. I would think there would be a simple way that we could find out who the people are that move into the village, by the post office, by whoever sells the house. Make it known that they have to contact the village office.
There you go.
State agents don't do that.
Yeah.
I understand that, but there's ways around it, is what I'm saying. I'm in the business field, I know
Okay,
that
well,
there are,
sit down and find out those ways because it's been
That's
frustrating me for a long time.
but I just want to say thank you for not punishing those of us that are doing the right thing.
I'm Nick Ciani, 7 Ardelia, Victoria. Funny, I have one more thing. The board made a statement in these documents we've been receiving, that although many of us will have
HOA
debts.
HOA board. HOA board.
Yeah,
what you guys say, what we think.
I'm sorry. In the beginning, Himmelgarden was still building, and a lot of us decided to put decks and patios on it. At the time, approval from Himmelgarden was required with drawings. We got that, and it went through the permit cycle with Peter Sheridan. We did that, they were inspected, no problems. Now that's all being thrown out. There's no grandfathering, they couldn't approve that. We're left with this work, this place is beautiful, come up and take a look at it in a minute. We've all done consistently deck work, landscaping work, it looks very, very nice. To even consider ripping it out is ludicrous. It's just ludicrous. Where they get this from is, nobody can understand it.
Next on the agenda. Board. And.
I respectfully request the board authorize corrections to coding errors identified between accounts 341010 and 341012. The fire insurance refund in the amount of $1264.24 was incorrectly posted to 341010, which is no longer in use. So respectfully request these funds be reclassified to 341021, which is the appropriate account for this transaction. Additionally, 3 payroll related transactions totaling $676.43 were misquoted between accounts 341010, 341012. I'm requesting that these funds be reallocated to 341012 to correct in the account as appropriate. That would decrease 341012, 676.43, increase by 341010 by the same amount, decrease 341021 by 1264.24, and increase 341010 by the same amount. The treasurer has provided the July abstract for approval, which includes June prepaid invoices and July claims. Total for July abstract is $17,991.54 and is to be approved per fund as follows: A fund $17,787.84, F fund $204, and G fund $0.
Motion for the branch substitute. Yeah, I'll make that motion. Discussion. Who's seconded? Discussion.
Yes. 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 Yeah, you see it on my own. You said number one is also.
Yeah. I said, I think it's correct. I'll take a motion to remove the frame.
While we're on the treasurer's report, adding on the extract. We got it.
I went through the trouble of his respect. Abstract?
Yes, I'll move the abstract, as noted by the treasurer, 17,787.84 from the A fund. F fund is 204 even, and the G fund is 0. For a total of 17,991.54. Second.
Discussion.
I had a question about purchase order. So we can finish the abstract first. Okay. Okay, question on this, the payment that we're paying is $594.30, but they're saying amount due is $648.14.
Right,
I
that's because sometimes these come in and they have other invoices that are already paid.
Okay,
So I have to keep track of what's paid and what isn't paid.
okay, I was just,
It happens like a lot with the low statement, like we'll pay a previous statement. And then I go through it, make sure which one's paid and not paid.
okay, I was just curious about that, because it threw me off and I was like,
Already.
Yes.
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 And next on the agenda.
June sides. All right, so June, we had 62 alarms, 450 staff hours, and throughout the year total, count 281. About 2,500 staff hours, the training hours and miscellaneous hours, the year to date up to about 6,000 staff hours. So upcoming events on the 25th, we'll be at the county fair, at the county fire department booth for information and recruitment purposes. And I don't have any update on our FCPA grant, haven't heard anything additional yet. And the new truck is not quite yet in service. We send the hose bed net back to get modified to fit properly.
The what?
The hose bed netting, we had to send the net back to get modified, because it didn't quite fit the truck properly. And we have a couple of radio programming updates that need to be done, so hopefully by the end of the week, we should have the truck in service or.
Thank you.
Lamont Engineering will re-survey what Lansing Engineering did. Because we're trying to close out Griffin's Ridge. And Blue feels like they claim to have re-surveyed. Blue doesn't believe them. They submitted the paperwork. The surveyor was there doing the survey. He believes we should have our surveyor re-survey their work. So that's what's going on here. I'm still a long way off from having a notice of termination for Belmonte. I believe we still have some money in Belmonte's that we can use to pay Lansing do the survey. We don't want to keep that in place. Talking about getting costs, I got a bid on the repair the work in the community room again from the rain. Spoke to the insurance company. They're on board, but they're actually not even going to send them pictures of the statement. And they're not even going to come. It's feared like they're not going to come look at it. I mean, the price of fixing the work is $1,600 without painting. And I don't know who's going to do the painting. Are we going to hire that out? Or we all include, in another. I mean, if you do it, you're going to have to probably paint the whole room. I guess you can get that.
you'd almost want to paint the whole room.
Yeah, I would think so.
Or
Well,
at least-
I'll tell you the number to paint this room. I said that, spend $1,500. Have this room painted inside. Which would be our price to be it's low.
That's
So maybe 2,000. Okay, the same for the house, yeah, we're gonna put our plan with it, so we'll get that done. We have the bids on replacing the roof here, so we have 2 bids on replacing the whole roof, and 2 bids on repairing the roof. They range in prices from whatever, 30,000 or less to 150,000. I talked to Jason about it. I did talk to, Jason, the engineer, about the asbestos. He felt there was no asbestos. They never built, built in. He looked at it, and well, the question becomes, what do we want to do? Do we want to replace the whole roof? Do we want to do a repair? I don't know if you got the email from Jason saying, we could kick the can down the road. I don't know.
Yeah. So I have to say, I mean, this is our building. If the roof fails, I mean, it's not like we're gonna be building other buildings.
Feel like we're in a financial position right now where it's doable.
Probably, yeah.
What I wouldn't want to do is kick a can down the road and then we're in a financial position where it's not doable. We're having lots of things out of value, so. So that would be kind of where I'm.
Okay, so we have 2 bids on total replacement. I don't know if you want to. So one is, I think there's a difference about $20,000.
I'll circulate it prior to this.
Okay.
Scanners.
Okay,
Sense or the. Go ahead.
Do the
Mike?
whole job.
The only thing I'd like to mention about doing the whole roof is I think when, just like we did when we did the bell tower, we kind of could have left it on the contractors to determine what materials they wanted to use. I think we should either have our engineer formulate a plan and have the roofers bid based on that plan, so everybody is using the same materials and we get a apples to apples low bidder scenario. Because at that price, one contractor might be using 18 gauge metal, one contractor might be using 20 gauge metal, or one guy's using thinner rubber versus thicker rubber. And if we have an engineer put together the,
why have him do all that? Why not just pass the 2 bids to the engineer? And he can judge, they list their materials and have him tell us which ones.
if they're willing to do that,
Oh,
then
sure. I think I do that.
What are the numbers, the 2 bids?
One is 100 and I'm just pulling it up. One's about 125,000 and the other one's,
About 160,000.
yeah, something like that. And we currently have 150,000 in the municipal building reserve fund as well as obviously unrestricted fund balance.
So did we generate and publish an RFP for this?
No, I just called around.
Okay, we have to do that. And so that way we'll end up with our, we'll have our engineer put the RFP together.
He put something together and I handed it out to all the contractors that came.
For that amount, still have to go through the steps.
And,
Originally, we thought it would just be repaired.
right,
35,000, so it didn't. Once you start talking about a whole roof repairs, I replace it. You get up to the bit of the area.
I only hesitate, if that's what we have to do, we can do it. But getting people to bid on projects around Lakeside, forget it, we couldn't get big.
General municipal law requires us to.
Okay, we're gonna publish it, yeah,
You're gonna be in tomorrow for
Yeah.
the vacations?
Yeah.
When's the vacation start?
Sunday.
Sunday, okay, so talk about this.
Sealed bids, the whole 9 yards.
Okay,
What's the immediate status on it?
so meeting, I think it's, please follow.
Staying for now.
Right.
Okay. Good.
We said, I think on June 6th and 7th, we had that ridiculous rain storm, and that's what it was. And everything's moving along, permits in the village, projects moving on, a couple of new permits. Things are happening faster than like people moving faster than I thought. That's it.
Alrighty, parking enforcement.
I wrote one ticket, which, in the month, which,
Sorry.
I understand that gentleman pled guilty to it, sent it to the clerk, and said, you're going to forward it to the court. We have a trial for it. Okay, that's correct.
Many warnings though.
Uh,
You've issued many warnings though. You had issued
So I
many
issued
warnings.
a few warnings. Yeah. Warnings, something much good.
You almost wrote me a ticket yesterday.
Auditorium.
The Carbon is in full swing. They're doing their roots workshops this week, and I attended all of them. So there's one tonight. Yeah, it's amazing. I keep hearing feedback from the parents. Just the past several years, they just continue to add so much value to the kids' lives that are doing camp. So I think these workshops are a big part of it. And so yeah, they've done songwriting, dance, and then tonight is auditioning. So I think we're drawing up a generation here of some awesome performers in our little space. So that's my favorite part, is just that they're in full swing, and yeah, lots of campers. I've been picking up the trash when it's okay, so there's a lot of kids there. Yeah, yeah.
Did you guys get finished with updating of the restaurants?
Yeah, so the list, what was that?
Dressing rooms.
The backstage rooms, so the doors were installed, and then we selected a green paint color that was painted up in our coats. But then otherwise, I think during the off season, we could work on some of the plumbing things that need to be done, and then hopefully make the floor, but we got them useful for their uses, and they also have like portable changing stations, so yeah. So everything that was essential, that's
Did the remotes for the van ever show up?
I think that some are located, I'm not sure if it's a remote issue, it's really two of them.
Yeah, Dan,
So,
Dan has a whole stack of. Remotes, and it's not.
yeah. It's two of the fan units themselves, I'm not sure without the issues, but. What's nice is that I'm grateful that the guys went out and opened big windows, because that makes a big difference, getting the hot air and out of the top. So. And then we also, this month, we had a really awesome open mic too. On a different. Yeah, so that's July, is that for? Thank you.
Tax bills were out, we're still collecting payments with penalties added, so please add the penalties if you're sending in late payments. We have a young woman who is doing some community service for us for her college application. And she is organizing our survey collection, which is kind of neat. So if you have a survey you want to share with us, please send it in. We'd like to include it in our spreadsheet of available surveys to refer to. Summer is really hot this year, as you know. The community room, as you can tell, is nice and cool. So if you want to bring a book, bring a game, you know, sit in the community room and cool off, you're welcome to come in the afternoon. As you know, John Stevenson has retired, still working some part-time. He's worked for the village for 32 years, many of them as superintendent. And we'd like to celebrate his retirement on August 7th at 6 p.m. And there will be more details to follow. Thank you.
So the only little bit that our committee has to piggyback off of what David said is the improvements on the dressing rooms are still ongoing, and I think we should still continue to talk about addressing the envelope of the auditorium. I noticed one of the doors at the last open mic night, the bottom of the door is completely rotted off and it was a exterior door. So I think we really need to start looking at that with much more seriousness before things start getting too bad.
That's a door like bathrooms.
That,
No, it's
no,
the main,
it's the main door.
yeah, so I think what happened is with all of them, they make the doors swell, so they're really tight when they close. So,
The
yeah,
bottoms are also rotted.
they are,
And
yeah,
you can poke a screwdriver.
Yeah.
Halfway to almost all the way through.
yeah,
And they're shot.
yeah. Yeah, they definitely shot, but that piece definitely broke because it's hitting the ground. I've thought about, because it had a metal plate on it, I've thought about if we just screwed that metal plate back on. But I feel like we need to take some, anyway.
That's only that's a
Yeah,
very,
it's a
very
very-
small mandate.
But yeah, are you thinking new doors?
I think we gotta do the whole envelope. We gotta put gutters on it.
Yeah,
We gotta paint it, scrape and paint it and replace any of the rotted wood on the building.
Yeah.
When you actually take a really close up look, really down near the ground where all the water comes off the auditorium, all that lower wood is starting to
yeah,
rot, and if water starts to get behind the siding, we're gonna have major problems.
I agree, yeah.
Be a great opportunity for a grant.
Yeah,
Yes,
I know it's gonna cost about $90,000 to $100,000.
We need to get a grant.
I did talk to Karen about it, and trying to get a matching grant. She was open, she said, put something together. So it'd be a great, I do think we need a grant to get something on it. So, it's a lot of money.
could we reach out to what was the name of the company that did that master plan? Cause they do grant, I think they do grant writing as well.
Yeah. Pull it down. And we have a really money budget for grant writing. We did 10,000.
Yeah, and they're an engineering architecture firm that specializes in historic buildings. To not only get projects like that off the ground, but to acquire grants and funds for those projects. So I think that would be a very good start. Since they already have all of the research on the building in its entirety.
On the company, the architect, I think
That did the master plan.
the recent one,
Yes,
Yeah.
we've had 3 or 4 of them.
yeah, the most
Most
recent,
recent one, yeah, we have his minutes, we know what's broken, I mean, he gives us a list right there.
yeah,
But I don't know if there's grant lines, I personally am hiring the grant lines,
well,
not an architect.
when you get on their website, they talk about assisting with like that whole genre of everything is in their wheelhouse. So I think it's a station them worth at least having, see if they can assist.
Yeah.
Grant that are required.
Yeah,
Would AI be an option?
We try.
yeah,
We'll do that, that's.
yeah. Yeah,
Brief committee?
Mark Marion, tree committee chair. Tina Alviar came to the office to talk to Sue about getting the DPW to do some pruning to accommodate the tents in Road Park for upcoming markets. She directed Tina to myself. We walked around, realized that their only pruning that needed to be done was for the trees that had dead branches. So that work is going to take place by me over the next week. The only other thing we have going on is we carried some mulching with the mulch by the hockey rink. That mulch can be taken, what's left, the DPW can take that. This weekend, we're going to finish using the mulch down at the tennis court. And when we're done with that, I'll let you know so the DPW can remove anything and stuff. That's all I have.
Next is rental registry discussion. You all received the latest version of the draft of the law. Up for discussion.
I don't even have a topic. Thank you.
So the two most recent revisions to the proposed local law were first to introduce a 3,500 foot exclusion for the registration and inspection requirement. And then the second part that was added was the right to appeal a decision. So as stood, the code enforcement officer would inspect property that was rented, would come up with a remediation plan, and there would be next steps that remediation plan was followed. We did add into that a right for somebody to come before the board for an appeal on that. So those are the two most recent changes. For me, I've been sort of, and I first of all want to say full disclosure, I do rent a property, so I want to make sure that everybody's aware of that.
You live 10 feet from that.
I live 10 feet from the house. So if we look at right now, my biggest concern around this is really the housing and affordability issues we have, not just in our area, but across the country. And that includes rentals. Rentals have become more and more expensive over time. We're struggling to afford rentals. When we look at the amount of rentals that are in the village, somewhere between 15 and 18% of the properties in the village are rented properties. The national average is about a third. So the overall number of rentals in the village are low. Maybe they're starting to increase, I'm not sure. About half of those rentals are owned by villagers themselves. And the vacancy rate is about 1/3 of the national average too. So yes, we do have some vacant buildings. But it's certainly well below what you're seeing elsewhere. I do think there's some concern about what we do when there's an LLC that owns property and how we get in contact with those folks. What I somewhat the issue with is the inspection procedure, because I think a lot of what that inspection procedure entails is currently covered under law that we have. If it's any kind of building permit is required for a property, if somebody's buying an investment property, they're in all likelihood going to get a building permit. Peter's going to have an opportunity to inspect that property, to make sure that it's up to code.
Why do you say that?
Any kind of building permit, it's done, it's in our local law, chapter 91 or 97, for that code enforcement officer to sign off this for any building. Are you asking why any investment owner would not?
No, what I meant, for example, up in Victorian Landings, I just found out that the original owner didn't.
Right.
They rented the property.
Right.
To someone.
Right. So I would assume,
Yeah, there was no CO required for that.
Right.
Anything.
So I would assume that if it's not requiring any, why would you want to know who that renter is? Unless that renter wants to be known. So that's my thing. To David and Chrissy's point, an insurance company is not going to cover your home if it's not fit to be lived in. So I see this as two separate problems. The first problem is we should be inspecting these homes every 2 years just solely because they're rented. To me, that doesn't make any sense, because if there's a safety issue for renters, there's a safety issue for owner occupiers. We don't have, we have two different sets of laws. The second issue, which I think has the merit, is how do we get in contact with an owner if they're an LLC specifically. I think we can probably tweak the law that we have currently to allow for the contact information to be generated for an LLC. And I think also Peter could go up to any house that was deemed unsafe, whether it's owner occupied or rented, and work with that person in terms of remediation. That's in our local law as it stands. So provided that you know who that person is that owns the property. We have within our current laws the ability to ensure those properties are safe. What we don't have is the ability to make sure we know who those folks are, if they're LLC. And so I see this as an issue where people we have without requiring a permanent $100 biannual inspection, and so on and so forth. So that's my position on it. I do think we've come a long way from where it was originally. I think that it makes total sense to have this 3,500 foot exclusion level. It makes total sense to have providing appeal for someone that's going with it, but in its current position right now, I'm not fully satisfied with where it is.
I'm in a similar boat. I don't have any rental properties, but I'm on the fence about the requiring of the inspections. Because I can see how that would be putting more of the burden on the renter instead of necessarily the landlord, because the landlord's just gonna force that upon the renter and make it their responsibility to do all that. What I could see is if there was some sort of way to require in between tenants or something like that, or at the start of a property going from a owner occupied to a long-term rental, some sort of requirement to require a safety inspection at that point in time.
Yeah.
Like you're changing the nature of the property from owner occupied to a rental, a long-term rental. At that point, have a safety inspection. But on the same hand, a lot of the insurance companies may usually do some sort of inspection for safety.
I have a separate policy for my rental. I think most people that rent properties would, and it does require a similar thing. And to your point, I think you alluded to it, but I forget if it's chapter 91 or chapter 97, there is a stipulation that says, in the event there's a change in use of a building, an inspection is required. I believe we could, again, tweak the language to say if it goes from owner occupied to rented, that would constitute a change of use. And so would that trigger an inspection prior to that being
Yeah, and I do understand that it would be very, very good for the village to have a contact person for a rental property, especially if we're getting into LLCs owning properties. That I think that is something that would benefit the village for the times that there are emergencies. But I think it does need some adjustments.
It would be helpful if you would circulate by email the adjustments you think are appropriate.
Yeah, I had made a couple of suggestions. One was to tweak the chapter. Again, I can't remember, it's 91 or 97, one of those two. Because there's two chapters that are concerning inspection. So my one suggestion would be to tweak that. I certainly. Yeah, offer some suggestions around it. My second, and I could make some suggestions around reworking this so that, for instance, we require an LLC to provide contact information just as we did with the short-term rentals. Because I would assume that if you're renting under your name, if you're a landlord and the building is owned in your name, that we would have that contact information to not the taxpayer, right? If when it's an LLC, that it becomes challenging.
What we're seeing a lot of now is homes going under trustees.
Yeah, or that.
I don't believe that we can legally make different requirements for individual owners versus LLC owners.
Okay.
How do we make an allowance for people to live?
Could you say that louder?
if we can't make a distinction between LLCs and individual owners of houses, then how can we make a distinction between people who live out of state and people who live within 3,500 feet of the house?
I think the rational, support for the 3,500 foot exclusion is that if you have somebody out of state, they're not driving by the house every couple of weeks. They don't have their eyes on that property. You live this close to the property, 3,500 feet, you're much more likely to be keeping track. It doesn't distinguish between LLCs or individuals. They're all persons in the eyes of the law. But I think the physical proximate to the house you're renting out makes a difference.
And that's a legally defensible.
Yes,
That it seems here to me that you would assume that somebody who lives close to the house can take care of the better. I have no idea if that's true.
well, or we could just simply say that if we feel the need to inspect houses that rent for short periods of time, there's no reason why we shouldn't be similarly concerned with rental periods in excess of 1 month. And have safety inspections for all of them.
So far, the only problem that I've heard is that we can't find the owners under certain circumstances. But the law as written has a lot of what I would call invasive activities about inspecting based on building codes that no house in the old building has at this point.
It's correct. We're talking about life safety, not building.
But some of the law says we're gonna follow the New York State Building Code. I understand that you, as the COE, can choose, or you aren't necessarily all the rest of the time. So I don't know who the next person will be, who will have your job and what rules they will follow. Because the way the law is currently being floated around is the New York State Building Code. It doesn't say anything about the New York State Safety Code. It's the New York State Building Code. And our houses in the old village, and over time, the new houses are going to start failing that code. So how do you, not necessarily you, how does the person who has your job, and it may not be you forever, how does it check?
You do the same thing we did with the short-term rental. We listed what we're looking for. These are the issues: smoke alarms, carbon monoxide alarms. Really, that was it. Those are the two main issues that we look for.
Means of egress.
Right?
Means of egress.
Means
Remember
of
the fire that we had here
You're not storing gasoline.
about a couple of decades ago, and there were children who had bedrooms upstairs. They had no second way out.
Okay, but like all of those things apply to everybody, people that live here as well. So if you're trying to make the village safer, then we should write a law to make the village safer.
We already have that. in chapter 9.
Let me just say, I'm going to say 10 years ago, 15 years ago, we had probably about 8 houses in foreclosure in the village. I was dealing with the banks. Nobody did crap. The banks would mow the lawn, and I'm running around like crazy trying to figure out who's gonna come do this, who's gonna come. I mean, I've had issues recently with landlords, houses with no heat, where they were renting it out, and there's no heat in that. Because I said, you have to maintain 68 degrees. The person moved, the person couldn't rent that house until he fixed the heat. The house next to me was rented out, and a woman lived there, and I said, you're gonna have to cut your grass. She said, I don't have one, no, I'm 70-something years old. I said, the owner said, I'm responsible for it. I cut the grass because the owner wouldn't cut the grass. I mean, I think there are issues. I think it's what?
But this is also. Your house is your house. Once you buy a house and want to rent it out, to me, that is a business. So I don't think it should be treated as your personal house.
And I agree with the law saying the 3,500 feet of your house, great, we know who you are, that's terrific, good enough. But if you're living in Miami or if you're living down in New York City, and I'll tell you, there's a number of houses rented up in Victoria Landing, and there's rental housing even in Griffin's Ridge.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of rental housing, and, you know, my fear is to say, you gave national numbers for rental. Saratoga is 40% of the housing in Saratoga is rental. We're right there.
Because
We're
they
prime.
built a million.
We're prime. I mean, they're building all around. We're prime for that.
There's something I want to insert here regarding enforcing the building code. It's really the state fire and safety code, and there are a bunch of different codes. There is an existing building code, and there's a new building code. And if you have an existing round-like structure, then you are grandfathered in with much of what is there. There may be requirements under the existing building code, like the second means of egress, which you have to follow. But by renting the home, you don't, and Peter going in and doing an inspection, it doesn't mean you have to bring the entire house up to code. So you were building a new house.
Okay, so two things here. It's been stated actually explicitly here that the reason we are making this law is that there are too many concerned, there's too many rentals. So we're saying it's about safety, and it's really about concern about too many rentals. So I think this is an end around to discourage rentals. That's my first statement. Second of all, chapter 97 of our current village code, dangerous or unsafe buildings. All buildings or structures which have any or all of the following defects, and I'll skip one of them because then I'll go to those buildings existing in violation of any provision of chapter 91 of administration and enforcement of the New York State Uniform Fire Prevention and Building Code. The code enforcement officer can revoke the certificate of occupancy. They can also then require inspection, and they can also, if any changes, and hold the owner liable for such expenses. That is within our code currently. It applies to both owner occupied buildings and rentals. Equivalently, I think we have the mechanisms in place already. With what we have, the only issue is the ability to identify who that person is. That's the problem. This is not the solution.
The village is constitutionally forbidden going into a house without probable cause to believe that there is a
So if the tenant,
a violation. So
Unless
if
you
you got this house with a bedroom on the second floor, no second means of egress,
right,
there's no way we're gonna know about
or any building in the village.
it. Or in.
Right, I know houses.
So-
We've
so
had
that's-
houses in the village with bedrooms on the third floor.
Right, so
That's
why are
all.
we singling out rental properties? If we can't constitutionally go into a property and determine the safety of any building in the village, why are we singling out rental properties versus owner occupied properties? What makes a tenant's life more valuable than an owner's life? Why does the village have a concern in terms of treating a tenant in a different way than treating somebody who's an owner? Right?
I think the village could regulate businesses.
Well, we can absolutely, why do we want to introduce in the middle of a housing crisis? Why do we want to introduce as a village regulations that exacerbate that housing crisis? Because any of these regulations that come into play will have downstream effects on, landlords don't want charities, right? Any expenses incurred by a landlord are therefore going to be passed on to the tenant, which is going to exacerbate it. If you disincentivize investment in our village, when we have a downturn and there are vacant properties, and we have all these regulations in place that dissuade investment into the village, you're going to have more rundown properties, not fewer. Right?
Aren't you talking about $50 a year?
No, I'm not talking about the inspection fees. I'm talking about, and there's nothing stipulated in the code as to what the code enforcement officer could deem a remediation.
Right.
Some future code enforcement officer could say, hey, I think there's lead paint here. Why don't we peel that back? Why don't we check for asbestos to make sure that that's it? And then all of a sudden you've got massive amounts of expenses. And again, this is singling out one particular type of property, which is a rental. And so we're gonna have a different set of standards for rentals. The difference between this and a short-term rental, because I think that's what's on everybody's mind, short-term rentals have the opposite effect on housing. More short-term rentals actually exacerbate the housing crisis because now there are fewer rentals for long-term renters, and that's what we see in places like Florida, where nobody can afford this $4,000 a month rent to live in a, you know, a rundown community, because all of those properties have been bought out by investors who are running an actual business, a short-term rent or an Airbnb. That is why we put regulations in the village, is to actually make this community more affordable. And when you have high levels of turnover like that, it does make sense to have some additional guardrails.
That's two things that happen, because that's related, which is, if we're worried about prices in the village, the supply and demand, and they're getting ready to go 1,500 units more. So that will drive down the value of our housing, potentially, because we will be more units more of us. However, village is a weird place for people who want to live anyway. If they want to live in the old core part of the villages, because they like old houses, they like the community. And I don't know how to price that part or unprice that, so I don't really make that. The other question I have though is to your point about the housing and the rules. If I'm gonna come in from Florida and buy one of these houses and work on it. But wait a second, I have to bring up the current code, because after a certain amount of work, I have to bring up the current code, and you do. Jason's talking about this a lot, whereas if you come in and do like more than 20% improvement in the house, you have to make the entire house meet current code. If that's true, then it would be far easier to rip down one of the old houses and put a new house. And would have been work on one of the old houses, which is way more expensive. So the possibility if location is the goal. It's far easier to do what they did in Albany and Albany Ave, where they ripped down the old house and put up a new one, than it is to be able to renovate and spend the time on fixing up an old house.
Yeah, and any building permit that's filed will trigger the ability for the code enforcement officer to be able to inspect that building. So we already have the mechanism. If somebody, for whatever reason, sells the house and rents it out and they haven't done any work on it, as long as we can get in touch with who that owner is, like, I mean, what are we doing here? I just think this is a solution and a problem, I think.
I haven't said anything because Matt and Eric are echoing everything I feel about this. But I think we got two issues. And one is identifying property. Why we have to duplicate, single out people because they're renters or because they're land, they are their owners who don't live in houses. I don't understand why we have all the mechanisms in place. So why?
I think we're looking at the health and safety of renters in the village, not so much the village residents. We're looking at people who come in and rent housing. Hopefully there's a smoke alarm, hopefully there's a calling outside line, and that's it. I mean, what they would say, if you have a way to get out, you're not on the third floor.
State laws, the tenants' rights that cover a lot of that.
Yeah.
Well, the house that the had to sign off that there's this carbon dioxide.
Yeah.
So you can modify this, so the part that would pass easily, I think, among us is a registration of renters.
Yeah.
And honestly.
Registration of renters. Registration of renters or
Owners, rentals, what registration of the owners of rental homes, and frankly, I don't even think 3,500-foot radius thing is important at that point. I think it's perfectly reasonable if I'm gonna rent the house, even if it's the house next door, that you know that it's mine. I think that's reasonable, so
I think
that
that's
you
a
can
good,
contact.
yeah, right, I mean, I agree with you, if you live in a village. Fine, I mean, that's great, we know who you are, we know who rent you, that's great, I think about the person from Miami, the person that's, I think the village is prime for, you know, the prices are right in this village for investment to come in.
I don't know about that, yeah, but it's, I mean, they use that house that just sold on Albany Ave, right, they are gonna rent it, right?
It's
Yeah.
already
It's already rented,
Mhm.
but they bought it for $400,000 and they're renting it for, yeah. I would call that an investment for some, yeah, so. I don't know how to make that happen.
And in terms of identifying owners, I mean, who do we send a tax to?
we get a lot of them.
getting them returned.
That's part of
We do.
part of the frustration.
I went through this with foreclosed properties. They don't even, they ignore, the banks ignore.
Oh, I remember when we had that.
Companies, they ignore, they, you know, I had swimming pools that hadn't been drained in
We
years.
had a squatter.
Yeah.
Wait a second. This question, forget about the interest then. What do we do as a village to make sure that we receive the income that we are supposed to receive? If we get a. So it's something you pass the law when it's passed, what do we do?
We pass it along to the county. The county pays us for that, and then it's the county's problem.
Right, it's almost a 2-year process.
Yeah.
From it rolls to one to the next, but I've gotten a few back. This year. Mortgage, most of the mortgages are done by escrow, so if somebody's doing an investment, a lot of times those are done.
Yeah.
With an escrow type of thing, but it's.
But you can't say with any certainty that people who are doing this are people who don't live here but own the house. There's got to be people who live here but don't take care of the house.
Yeah.
And you know, I mentioned this last time, I walk around the house, walk around the village, and I can look in a window and just see a bunch of stacked boxes up. I mean, you know, how do you?
And foreclosures, vacant houses, there, none of this is all into that, it's owned by the bank.
And the banks aren't responsible.
No, the banks aren't responsible, there's no contact whatsoever. That is a problem, I get it, but this is not.
I guess I'm just surprised that people are threatened by saying, oh, you have to have a smoke alarm. I'm sure you got a smoke alarm.
I think
in your house, I'm sure you have.
It's not the property owners, it's because it's singling out a certain type of person in the village, it's breaches regulations that we don't really need to have, because we already have some in our existing code.
We don't have anything in our
Plan
local law
right here.
To allow you to go into the building, yes.
to allow us to do a brief inspection for the safety of the tenant.
If a
I
building,
don't know what the public benefit is of protecting landlords from having a safety check is.
so first of all, any building permit that's required requires an inspection. Any building that is deemed unsafe under the exterior, can have a certificate of occupancy. Any building that is rented requires a separate insurance policy. And I mean, no insurer is gonna insure a house that is unsafe.
Does the village have an interest in getting a copy of that to make sure it's insured?
No.
If a fire starts in this house looks
It's
here.
an invasion of privacy, in my opinion. I think it's getting too invasive. It's the village getting involved in people's everyday lives that I don't think is necessary. I don't think it's our purview. I don't think we have an interest in protecting one certain type of person over any other. I think that it is worthwhile in our interest to get an idea of who those folks are, but the inspection part of it, to me, is solely to do with the fact that we're looking to dissuade rentals in the village. You said it, Peter. You literally did it. Literally said it. You said Saratoga had 40% and we're going that way, and this is why we're doing it. I mean, so to me, I don't think I think, and that wouldn't pass the muster test. If basically we're making a law to do something else than what we're intending to do.
I didn't interpret it that way.
It literally was, well, first of all, the meeting before this first local one was put forward. Peter said at the end of the meeting, in the public comment part, that he was concerned about the number of rentals in the village. That's part of the record. And then the next week we had this regulation on our desks. So, and then tonight, Peter said again, twice at least, he's concerned about people from Miami. He's concerned that this is going to be a new thing, that the price is right for the village, that investors are going to come in, that Saratoga had 40% rental. So this is all about, to me, dissuading people from investing in our community. I think we have as a village, should look at making housing more affordable, not less affordable. We shouldn't be doing things to make things less affordable. And I'm not talking about the registration fee because I don't think that's a big part of it. However, I do think it is in our interest as a village to have the contact information for folks. That's all we need.
Yeah, so let's do this then, right? Like, if we're gonna rewrite this regulation, as near as I can tell, county votes, if you agree, if you said you agree with Matt and I, 3-2 at best, I think you're on the fence with it. So I don't think this as it is going to pass.
No.
What would pass, at least initially, easily, would be registration, because I think we all agree that it makes sense that we village should be able to reach out to somebody, an owner of a building, for a variety of reasons. Taxes, whether it be it's on fire, it's got water in the basement, blah, 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 blah.
We can
We all
provide
agree with that.
We can provide finding, that if you don't do so within X amount of days, you'll find X amount of dollars, blah, 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 blah. And have all the legal remediation for it, so that there's an enforcement mechanism behind it, which everybody in this village that owns property is probably going to sign up. And if you want that.
So this legislation could be written for that, which removes. If we're worried about the safety of the village, let's invite the fire department to set something on fire down at the ballpark and put it out real fast and show you exactly how fast the whole building burns up. And then we can like distribute fire, we can distribute smoke detector, carbon monoxide. Like, you know, and that's for everybody.
Yeah.
Like, we can do things like that, it could bring up, if you're worried about the way the buildings look. Well, yeah, I think we probably could try to enforce that a little bit better, and that also applies to not just rentals, but other sizes, right? Like, if we're gonna go down that path, that one's gonna be really fun.
And I just want to make it clear, I really support owner occupying housing.
Yeah,
I'm not big on 40% rental housing
I get
in the
it.
village.
I get it.
Really, that's what I'm trying to say.
I
I
get
like owner occupying.
I think that if that's the sense of the community and the sense of the board, that we could look at what that looks, but this is not that, this is basically an end around to try to do that, and I don't agree with doing it that way. I do think we have an interest in finding out, like Taylor's point, so. I think we should, just sum up my views, I think we should go back to the drawing board a little bit and recraft something and present it at another meeting.
And I think what we really helpful, I mean, personally, is we really need to find the problem before we see that piece of it.
Right,
Right.
right. You have, this is a solution in search of the problem.
Well,
It's
yeah,
too broad,
the problem.
it covers way too many things. Yeah, we don't need it all.
The problem that I see is we can't contact mysterious owners because they're hiding under an LLC. Which we're probably gonna struggle to even get a name attached to that LLC to begin with. Even if we do pass a law.
Yeah.
Because the whole point of an LLC is that is the name and that is the separate entity.
Well,
So-
we find them.
Yeah, that's what I was saying, is enforcement mechanism involved.
Yes, we would have to have some sort of. But we will just be sending it to an empty PO box anyways. We might have to take it a step farther and have some sort of enforcement mechanism that can eventually lead to something. Much larger than just a monetary fine.
And I do think we could change, modify the existing law, because it's mentioned change of use, which I think means changing from residential to commercial or something like this. Like, one family to three family, I think we could make a small adjustment. Stipulate that a change of use could be going from owner occupied to rental and requiring savings that. I think that's a reasonable. Yeah.
I think that would be very reasonable is at a change of circumstance.
Yeah.
At that point to say, okay, let's actually look at the safety, where are the bedrooms, what are the egress points?
Yeah.
And to write it in a specific manner that it states specifically safety, exactly what is going to be checked.
Yeah.
CO detector,
Right, yeah.
make sure that they're not stacking toilet paper on top of their furnace or the wood
But if
fireplace.
you're worried about development and rentals and people owning buildings outside the village, you might want to take a look at buying up some property. And if you can't afford to do that, you have a pretty strict zoning law as it is. You could even make it tougher.
Yeah, and I think if we would legitimately, if that's the goal of the board, that's, we should set out to do that through zoning and other things, but we shouldn't aim to do it through.
What last one? 26 Albany Avenue,
Yes,
we bought it, it's a rental, there are 2 bedrooms in the basement. They went, so you can't use those, you know, you can't use those as bedrooms in that basement. So I know, am I going back in there to look at it, and see, is there people living in the basement? I am.
I mean, even if you got to inspect them every 2 years, you will never, ever know.
I will never know.
Right.
Yeah.
None of us will ever.
But that's what any.
Right.
There's 3rd floor bedrooms in my house that I grew up in.
Okay.
That's.
Our assignment for next meeting is to do chapter 91 and 91 and 97 of our code. And let us know your thoughts.
Yeah, and we can add in something around the street.
And just to give a scope, how big the problem is, and how small the problem is. If this were applied, if this were passed, it would apply to, I think, 10 houses.
which is what, one,
And
Right, so, I mean, what do we need a third of this? Okay. Good.
all right, next item. Closing vote on.
Still waiting.
Closing vote on 9:30, we're going to table that because, I asked if there were any more academics showing up down there, and it's like, maybe we could do one time. We will monitor that. Take action if needed in the future. We had a request to close Albany Ave for a block party July 23rd, 5 to 8 p.m. Just, I think, just the portion of Albany between Burlington and Wavy Path. Whatever it's.
No, it's,
Which day was that?
Heavy?
is it? Heading is further down.
That's right next to the
Away.
So, I don't know if we need a resolution for that, Don, or just a.
I don't remember the close. I don't remember what's allowed to close service.
Fine, weird.
Let us put a note on there.
Want to let people know, and
So we don't need a resolution, we just say, giving a blessing.
the backyard. Backyard.
Before you before you change topics, could I ask about our visual cameras?
Okay.
So back in April, May, we talked about the marketing contract and the antique festival contracts and making them so they're year to year with the different things on it. We discussed it, we said, okay, we sort of sent them out to both, but we never, when I'm going through the notes more recently, we never put a resolution to it. So can we resolve to ratify these agreements so that we don't have to go through this?
I mean, you ratify it for sure, right? This will be in perpetuity.
Oh, okay.
Right, we didn't put a resolution on it, we said, yeah, okay, but we didn't
Okay.
formally do it as a
I'll take it
resolution,
as
so, thank you.
allow those letters, yeah, as a B.
Right, to include the annual language
Yes.
for antique festival and.
I'll second that.
Discussion about that.
yes,
Yes. Yes.
Yes. Thank you.
And correspondence.
I have one from the post office. There's been some issues with the mailboxes, the blue mailboxes outside the buildings, and also up at Victoria Landings and Victoria Landings and Griffin's Ridge. And you just need to know that if you are sending mail to somebody in the village with a 12151, don't use those boxes, bring the mail inside. Those boxes get picked up out of the blue containers outside. They go onto the truck. They get sent to Albany for processing. Therefore, it causes delays. So if you have anything that's being distributed within the village, you may want to just bring it in and put it in the Round Lake box and have it done directly. It'll take us by that process. You
Yeah,
could,
really.
and remember to put
Just drop
a
it off.
stamp on those ones that you're putting in the Round Lake box. Thank you, from the post office.
Okay, approval of minutes. June 18th meeting, Matt was not here. So
I'll second it.
yes, all moved, seconded, discussion.
Yes.
Yes.
Abstain.
Yes. Mark?
Sue, you, in the minutes you referred to me as Stu. So you straight with tomorrow.
Mark.
Yeah, Mark.
Good catch, Mark.
For the tree committee, told me the last, I think fortunate half, you just said Stu said this, Stu said this.
Change it to tree farm, tree person.
Which is what's happening.
What's the name instead of Mark?
You
Oh,
call him.
yeah.
Oh, maybe in June I did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I
I
was
think
mistaken.
Stu was here for some of that.
Right,
I think he was.
No,
not in June, I
no,
think you,
he was previous here.
Okay.
Yeah.
you don't know.
That's good. Love it.
All right, did we vote on that?
Yes.
Yeah.
Because Matt is saying twice.
Yes. Abstain.
Correct. So,
Mr. Village Attorney.
The village board passed a resolution to convey certain property to Stu and Julie Galloway. In putting together the papers, I discovered they don't own it. They've given it to their daughters. Who live here in the village. And I am presuming that the board doesn't hear that it's going to the daughters, who are not the title owners of that property, as opposed to the life tenants, which is Stu and Julie Galloway. Just letting you know if somebody does have a problem with that, fine, otherwise I'm just continuing to. You know, the papers are with the Galloway's attorney waiting for his approval.
So that's the landlocked, portion or behind the house.
Yes.
No.
No.
Hey, village trustees, Kirk.
Said a lot. I'm good.
You're breathing.
I'm good.
And the mayor is good. Public comment.
When's that truck going up for auction?
Well,
I'm gonna have a long break beer before that thing gets
you already
started.
do that.
Where is
We discovered a problem with the brake line, so we have to check it out.
That's what happens when you let it sit down there for 3 years. Brake lights a lot,
3 years.
pretty damn close, I got it.
Well, you can try to hide it in public view.
It doesn't work.
Well, I don't, we might, I got rid of my BMW, so I'm slowly letting go. Yeah.
What, he's gonna bid for the truck?
Yeah, right, so I have room for the truck.
That's right. It'll fit that parking spot.
Uh,
I was looking for that car, and I couldn't find it anymore.
nah, wife made me get rid of it.
Oh, same. Yeah, I saw it.
These fix it. We'll sell it. All right, we'll take it under advisement, Mr. Nickel. I believe she nagged me more than anybody about it.
Nag, you see, can't get.
The last person that called the boss.
Exactly.
No executive session, all right. Okay, entertain a motion, we adjourn.
So to adjourn.
Thank you all.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Yep.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah, I was, I was gonna say, recently, I was, like,
So you could be on
See ya, take care.
Good night.